Alrighty, and we're back for another episode. We're here for episode number 16. Today is June 28th, so you'll be hearing this on June 29th. June 30th. I take that back. June 30th. So before we get into it, we just want to say, we really appreciate the support and everyone coming and subscribing to our channel and commenting and liking. We really appreciate it. We enjoy the interaction, and we really hope that you guys keep going, keep liking the content, spreading the word. If you hadn't already, definitely hit that subscribe button with the notifications. We're posting between 2 and 3 videos a week. The notifications definitely lets you know when we do post. Most of the time it'll be every Monday at about 11:30, and then Wednesdays and Thursdays are also our posting times at about 11:30 in the morning Central Time. So today we got a good show for you, just mainly focused on Oklahoma recruiting, going over Derek Brown, Luther Burton, Kenyatta Jackson, and Devin Campbell. A few notes that have kind of happened the last weekend or the week before, with the Champion Barbecue. I mean, there's so much that has went on, and with the amount of talent that was on campus for OU, and we're just still trying to process all that, get through it, and bring it to you guys in chunks of that are manageable rather than recording for 3 hours at a time. So first guy we'll go over most recent news as of today, Monday, is Derek Brown. We did talk about him. I believe it was episode 12 or 13. I think it was the preview to the Champion Barbecue.
Yeah, I was right going into it because I believe he was visiting at the time.
Yeah, exactly. So for everyone that hadn't seen it, definitely go check out that episode where we previewed the Champion Barbecue. But just to give you a little brief background on him, he's 6'3", 210 pounds from Texarkana, Texas. He's in the 2022 class. He's a 4-star, number 300 overall, and the number 14 edge rusher in the class. Not the highest rated guy, but has a lot of upside potential with that frame. He has a connection with OU with Clayton Smith, and so they were really good friends. Obviously Clayton Smith came from Texarkana, and so they have been exploring the idea of being on the same team. They played basically the same position, give or take, both on the defense. But really with him, he put out his top 2 today. I know it was Texas and Baylor. It seems to be like a top 3, but he left Oklahoma off. It's really Oklahoma, Texas, and Baylor. And right now he put Texas and Baylor as his top 2. And from everything that I've read or that we've gathered is, like we discussed in the previous episode, he was going to be a victim, most likely. I'm not saying it's 100% sure, of having so much talent in the defensive line edge position that he might not have seen the field for multiple years. And he's got programs that are knocking on his door, like Texas and Baylor, that really need it, or at least have an opening position where he can truly compete for a starting position. Jose, do you have anything to add on to that? I've got more, but I just want to hear what you thought, because that's my initial takeaway, like we said a couple weeks ago.
No, for sure. And I think the one interest, if you go back and listen to it, we talk about his frame. He's only 17, going to turn 18. So he's still got a lot of ways to build, frame wise, but it seems like as an edge rusher, he's pretty small. If you go onto his Twitter account, he says he's an outside linebacker. His Twitter handle is outside linebacker. So there's a little confusion there, at least for me, as to why he's proclaiming outside linebacker while every recruiting site puts him in as an edge. He probably just has a lot of pass rushing talent that he just needs to build weight on to actually transfer into the college level. But yeah, this guy you'll probably touch on it, but it seems like he is really just wanting to be wanted overall. And as much as we want him, I don't think that we can absolutely say, hey, come play for Oklahoma, because like you said, we do have so much talent. Clayton Smith, who we're very high on, and definitely keep an eye out for a Houdat that will be coming soon. But that guy is extremely talented, and if he's got a weight behind him, guys like Reggie Grimes, guys like this year we'll have Nick Bonito still around. So like he's got to, if he comes to Oklahoma, it will be a development time for probably a few years. He probably won't play till his redshirt sophomore year. But they wouldn't, I mean, if you go play for Alabama, you're competing. So like at this point, it's just kind of a personality thing, right? You either want to compete or you want time on the field. It's just kind of going to depend on what he ends up wanting once he gets closer to his time to decide.
Yeah, and I think, he visited Texas last weekend, I believe. Basically, the Longhorns came to him and, as soon as he got there and kind of said, we want you, we need you. Like you're a piece that we need on defense. And, I'll kind of spin this around, I understand, and Texas probably does need them, and good on them for explaining that. But it's also good on Oklahoma basically to say, listen, we're not going to sell you that we truly need you and you're going to have a starting role. And then he gets on campus and then he just is like, oh, this isn't what they said. And he's not getting any playing time, but they told me I was going to. And, then he gets upset, then he transfers, and that doesn't look good on OU when you're telling the kid what he wants to hear and then you do something totally different. So OU's probably shooting them really straight. Just like, listen, I mean, it's just like any position now at Oklahoma. If you want to play for us, great. I mean, we love to have you, but the best player, no matter the, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, is going to play. And so I think that's really what it's coming down to. I think he wants to be a Sooner, but I think he knows that if he's going to play, it might be a few more years, like 2, 3, 4 years of developing and spending a lot of times in the weight room, practicing, being on the scout team, providing depth. And so, I mean, I can't blame him. I get it. If you got another Power 5 team right down the road, in Austin calling you, or Baylor, you can go get a starting position maybe in year 2 and you might be able to go to the league quicker. I can't judge him for that, but I think deep down he wants to be a Sooner. And I think it just might be a little clogged. And with this, I don't think Oklahoma's totally out of it. I mean, OU's done a great job recruiting him. He could switch, it's all about relationships. And, with Clayton Smith here, he very well, might feel really comfortable and come actually ultimately choose Oklahoma, but I don't think he will. Saying all that, Oklahoma's in a great spot for Derek Moore. In that same episode, we did cover Derek Moore, great edge rusher out of Baltimore, Maryland, Marvin Jones, Kenyatta Jackson, which we'll talk a little bit more about in this video a little bit later. And then also the big guy, not that the other guys aren't very good. It's just Omari Abor. OU's going to get a few more cracks at him, a few more visits, with him just in Texas 2-3 hours away. He's going to be on campus a few more times before the season or before his decision is made. And with everything, he's probably going to be a Texas Longhorn for Derek Brown. And right now his commitment is set for July 20th. So we'll probably know in the next, about 3-4 weeks. Yeah. And most likely it'll be a Longhorn. And just because he commits, it might not end up happening. Granted, OU might miss out on a couple of these guys and really come beating down his door. And at that point be like, we actually really need you. And just because you commit doesn't mean you're signed. So, exactly. Which we've known that a few times. We've seen that happen to us a few times. But do you have anything to add with him?
I think I do think he will probably be a Longhorn. It's obviously just a much more appealing place to go play at than being a bit in Baylor, especially now. It's still, I mean, Matt Rule left and they went from competing to the Big 12 to being right back where they started before Matt Rule was around, at pretty much at the bottom. Like they're going to be building everything back up. And not that Texas isn't kind of in that same position, but they have a notable coach that is obviously putting his foot down when it comes to recruiting. And that's priority number 1 for Sark right now. And if he can bring a guy like Derek Brown in, it's going to be big time for his defense. And that's kind of what Texas is kind of bread and butter is. It's not like Texas is known for their huge high powered offense like Oklahoma is. They've kind of been more of the defensive team for the Big 12. I think that's turning around obviously with Grinch at Oklahoma. But honestly, if he does go to Texas, then he might, obviously, like you said, like we're being very straightforward with him. You're not going to be the starting linebacker or edge rusher for us year 1 or year 2, possibly. But if Texas is, to be honest, kind of playing the desperate game, saying we need you here like tomorrow, and you're gonna have a spot on our team starting, after 1 year or almost immediately, then if it turns out to be a lie and he doesn't develop like they expect him to, then he's not going to be happy. And he might be in the transfer portal. That's going to be an interesting thing to see over the next year or two. Like maybe Oklahoma will still be interested. I mean, we are getting a lot of talent, but if he does develop body wise to be, 230, he probably might gain an inch on his height. Like, why not go after a guy that decided to go to Texas? And it would be a fun story to cover too. Like, we're flipping a guy after he decided to go over to Texas because there was less competition. Now he thinks he might be able to compete at Oklahoma. It's highly doubtful. He'd probably transfer to like a smaller program, probably go to Baylor, assuming that they're not going to get much better over the next couple of years. But he will be interesting to see, just because it seems like it's kind of an ego thing right now with his recruiting, rather than, where am I going to develop at my best and be the best I can be. And it's different for everyone. I think when I was 17, I'd probably be in the same position. I want to go where I'm wanted, not where I'm going to wait around for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to sell. And I know Alabama deals with that. And, and we're sitting here saying that he might, not be that great or might not be good enough to start at Oklahoma. But they're on the other side of the, other token, he very well might be a terrific pass rusher for the Longhorns, and we might be regretting what we've done to his recruitment. You just never know with these kids. We've had plenty of 3 stars turn into studs, and we've had plenty of 4 and 5 stars be duds and off our program. Obviously this offseason we've seen some issues arise, and then we've just had talent that just never developed. So he very well might be making us eat our words, and more power to him. But I just feel like right now, I think OU's just shooting them straight and just saying, hey, we've got a spot for you, but it's a competition spot. So
definitely. It just also kind of depends on the coaching staff, right, at Texas. I can't really think. I mean, obviously Sark probably brought his own staff in, but I can't think of like a top tier linebacker or edge rusher that has come out of Texas, to the pros and been like ready to go. They're all kind of developmental, and usually just DBs are kind of like what is drafted out of Texas right now. I know I'm a Vikings fan, and we have 2 of them. They were all right in college, but they weren't anything amazing.
Yeah, I think their best edge rushers. I don't know. I think he played last year. He was on the team last year. Joseph Osai.
Yeah, Joseph Osai. Yeah, he was drafted this year. Don't remember what round, but he was drafted.
Yeah, he was pretty good. But enough of him. We'll move on to an actual Sooners commit and their top one in the 2022 class, Luther Burden. There's been a lot of nervous Sooner fans, and including us. I mean, we're no different than everyone else. A little nervous about him. For anyone that doesn't know, Luther, he's 6'2", about 200-pound, wide receiver from St. Louis, the 2022 5-star, number 11 overall guy, number 1 overall wide receiver. So big-time guy, big-time talent. He has been visiting with some other programs. Obviously, he went and visited Alabama while the Champ U barbecue was going on. He was having a 7-on-7 camp tournament deal down around that neck of the woods, and it looked like he made his way up to Georgia to visit in Athens to the Bulldogs, and he did post a picture on Twitter, him in Bulldogs gear. And so, it's never fun to see a guy like him with that much talent go visit other top-notch programs. But, at the same time, you just have to trust with your relationship. And, and it seems like things have kind of been reassured. Burden came to OU this weekend, or this past weekend, with his quarterback, Robert Battle, who he's a 2024 quarterback. So he's way out in the future. And most likely if Oklahoma wins, the sweepstakes of Malachi Nelson, probably won't be competing for him or have an interest in him just because of the roster spot. But it's probably good to have him on campus just because it is Luther's friend. They came down for the high school camp that Lincoln Riley and them put on. And basically this was kind of a trip to he hasn't been on campus for a while. OU got some reassurance, and I don't think he's given any thought of flipping or anything indication to Oklahoma. What do you think, Jose?
Oh yeah, I think like you said, we have been kind of on eggshells. It seems like not really knowing where his his head is at. I think we've just as fans, we're also kind of already married to the idea of the Burden Williams connection. Like we already kind of pictured in our head, you know, the possibilities of Luther and Caleb just playing catch out there versus, you know, obviously, honestly, defenses that probably won't be able to stop them because they're so talented at football. But you know, like I think Alabama's obviously, you know, giving us a run for our money. We talked about it right before we started recording. It seems like we're going to start seeing a lot of kids be between Oklahoma and Alabama. I mentioned it in one of our last episodes. Like Oklahoma is going to start becoming the next dynasty once Nick Saban retires, but Nick Saban's still around. He's not going to give up easily, and he's not going to sit down. He's going to always have some fight in him when it comes to bringing in those talented guys. So I think this weekend was definitely nice. He was in Norman. Hopefully, I think there was some reassurance there potentially between him and the coaching staff, but you never know. Like it's not official until he signs a piece of paper that says I will be a Sooner. So anything can happen here in the next few months. Hopefully he is an early signee and an early enrollee in Norman, but we've got a lot of time between now and I believe it's November when the early
December
early signing period. So I mean, we got 6 more months of stressing out a little bit to see if Burden's going to stay with his commitment of being a Sooner.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, you know, he came to Norman unofficially. So, you know, he's from St. Louis. And so they drove. I mean, that's 6-7 hours. That has to speak a little bit, you know, I mean, taking the time, and he was on the road last weekend. And he took the time to go drive to Norman just to go visit, just because, not because he's, you know, because he had to, it's just because he wanted to. So, you know, I mean, we've seen this. We've seen Jace McClellan be committed to us for 2 years. And then within the last week, we saw him kind of start to flip. And then the day of, he signed with Alabama. So you just really never know. But I mean, this is probably the best you can feel until he signs that piece of paper. If the Sooners play well, you know, Hazelwood plays well, Mims plays well, and just, you know, if we win the national championship, it's really all the product on the field. I think a lot of these kids that are 50-50 between, or, you know, maybe 33 between OU, Ohio State, and Alabama, you look at the product on the field. I mean, Alabama most likely is going to be competing for a national title. Ohio State probably will too, as long as their quarterback situation is handled, which I know they've got great talent there already. You know, Quinn Ewers in the 2022 class, if their quarterback situation is situated, they'll be fine too. And it's just really, it's going to come down to, you're going to win a couple of recruits. Each team's going to win a couple of recruits every year on their product, on their, how well they're doing on the field. So I feel like we win the Big 12, maybe go win a national championship. There's going to be no second thoughts. For any comparison, I kind of feel like his frame and his potential could be a CD Lamb. I mean, you know, just 6'2", I think CD 6'3". You know, he is 17 years old, so he could grow a little bit more. You just never know. And extremely athletic, and it's just exciting to see. Hopefully we hold on to him, but I feel a lot better than we did.
For sure.
So, all right. You have anything else to add on him, or are we good to roll on?
I think we're ready to go on to the next one.
All right. And, you know, I just still catch myself for thinking, like, all this talent we're talking about, the defensive end and edge rushing position, it's just turning into a plethora. And another guy, you know, this guy's terrific, is Kenyatta Jackson. And he's a 6'5", 231-pound edge rusher from Hollywood, Florida, which we've had a great player from Hollywood before. He's a 2022 4-star, number 76 overall prospect, and the number 5 edge rusher in their class. And I found it really interesting doing some research on him. I mean, the guy's got over an 80-inch wingspan. I mean, that is insane. And, you know, as an edge rusher, you obviously want the longer wingspan. You keep the offensive linemen and the tackles, you keep them further away, and you can start looking from side to side. And as he fills out, probably he'll fill out to 260, 265 in that edge position role. He's going to have a lot more power than he already does, because I feel like he just bullies a bunch of people in high school that are his size or smaller, and he's just huge. And I mean, 6'5", 230 as going into senior year of high school. I just don't know how you stop that. He's extremely fast. His first step is great. He just overpowers kids. He just visited Ohio State this past weekend. Obviously, the weekend before, he came to Champ U Barbecue. I did see on his Twitter that he said, he had a great time in Columbus, and he's planning to make another visit back. So I'd imagine he's going to be coming back this fall for a game. I'm pretty sure I don't know which game, but I think I would want to say it's either Nebraska or Western Carolina game. He's planning to come back to Oklahoma. But saying all that, he does want to decide where he's going to go before the start of his senior season. So when he goes and visits these other schools, whether it's us, Ohio State, Alabama, he probably will be committed to one of them. So it sounds like he's going to take his visits, even though he's committed. So what else do you have to add with him?
Now, whenever I was watching his highlight tape, he looked and played like Ronnie Perkins. If we want to compare him to a guy we've had at Oklahoma, he just puts his nose down and he gets through that line no matter what he has to do. And obviously right now he can overpower people, but I don't see that changing much with, like you said, his size and weight as a 17-year-old. He's got an 80-inch wingspan now. Imagine what he's going to look like when he's 20. He'll probably be that 260, 265 that you just mentioned, maybe an inch or two taller. And if he does grow a little bit, probably a little bit longer arms. So it's going to be hard to stop him wherever he goes. I think at this point, it's kind of up in the air where he's going. When I was looking it up, Ohio State is a big favorite amongst all the experts and what has been heard of by Kenyatta. But I think Oklahoma's making a big push right now. If he is going to go somewhere, I would probably expect that it does stay true to Ohio State, just because they produce a lot of edge talent, and it'd be hard to kind of compete. Like we bring in our top defensive players over the last 5 years, and Ohio State does, just to see who, hey, like, we can teach you something when you come to our camps or during the off season, when we have some time to come back to our alma maters. Like, they've got the Bosa brothers, they've got Chase Young, and I'm sure they have a lot more, but those were the three most recent defensive talents, and one of them went number 2 overall. 2 of them went number 2 overall, if I remember correctly. So they're probably he might see that and be like, I'm pretty sure they have the same defensive line coach that those guys had.
Larry Johnson.
So like, he can go in, maybe sit 1 year just to beef up a little bit, and probably because they have some amazing talent still at Ohio State. But after that, he'll dominate the Big Ten for 2-3 years, and then potentially be a first-round pick, top 5 pick. So that's really what OU's competition is right now, and everyone's competition. Like, I don't think any school can say we have produced this much edge talent other than Ohio State, and that's going to be a big factor for him. And I mean, personally, I wouldn't blame him if he went there. It'd be great to have him in Norman, but it's hard to say no to Larry Johnson and the Bosa brothers and Chase Young when you play that same position.
Yeah, it's tough. And just like, we're talking about that, we're starting to get a plethora of talent. I mean, thing is, Ohio State never has a drought of talent at the edge position. So wherever he goes, whether it's Oklahoma, Ohio State, or Alabama, it doesn't sound like he's scared of competition at all.
No, which is a good thing.
Yeah, he sounds very confident in his abilities. And so I think he's going to be, come in, it doesn't matter where he goes, and he's going to probably start year 2 or at least play a big role in year 2. So it's going to be an interesting one to watch. I really think this kid might come down to the product on the field.
Definitely.
Because there's a tradition at Ohio State. Oklahoma's just starting to get going on a tradition. And I think if Grinch can take the next step with this current defense, it might soothe a lot of hesitations and concerns of like, is this for real? Which I think it is, but I just think sometimes when you have a sure thing up somewhere and then you've got an up and coming deal, it's just like any job. You got an established company versus an up and coming, startup job or a company. You're probably going to want to side with the sure thing, not the new thing. So I don't know. Just because he commits somewhere in August or whenever he does decide to commit, doesn't mean he's going to be locked up. So
outside of Abor, I think this guy's a guy that we should definitely want in Norman, because like you said, that just his frame is intimidating at 17 years old, and
Yeah.
seeing him in crimson and cream will be a lot more soothing than seeing him in their Buckeyes colors, because I'm sure we'll
Scarlet.
play him in the playoffs and it's not going to be fun. No matter how
Yeah.
talented Coach B can make that line, that kid's going to get through no matter what.
Yeah, and you think of a pairing of Kenyatta Jackson and then like Derek Moore, not Derek Brown, but Derek Moore, who's from Baltimore. And then you add one other kid. I mean, if you pull
Brownwell
three of
Dingy,
these, yeah, I mean, yeah, and then Brownwell. I mean, you pull
Laveus
three or
Overton. Sorry to interrupt, but like
well,
think of all these guys that are coming in 2022, 23,
well,
23 potentially.
yeah, yeah, and then I mean, really, if we can land three of these guys, you know, we're bound to lose one or two. I mean, whether it's Omari Abor or if it's Dindy or whoever, but if we can land two or three, it's huge. I mean, just the fact that we're even competing at this point, I still get so excited about. But that's all I've got on him. Definitely something to watch for. Maybe next month.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see a commitment, but he might drag it out. He might wait. I don't know.
We'll
So
see. Hopefully it's good
we'll
for
move
us
on.
though.
Yeah, hopefully, but we'll see. I don't think we're going to have an issue with getting great edge talent. No. So we'll move on to our final guy we're going to talk about. This guy we haven't talked about at all on this podcast, mainly because he hasn't had much buzz with Oklahoma until recently, and that's Devin Campbell, 6'3", 310 pound offensive lineman from Arlington, Texas. He's a 2022 5-star, number 10 overall player, and number 1 interior offensive lineman. He's a two-sport athlete, which to think he's 310 pounds and can play basketball as well as football is pretty hard for me to wrap my mind around, being over 300 pounds and doing that. And he can dunk. So with him, he's very athletic. He's going to play at the guard position. He's 6'3". Most guys don't play offensive tackle in the NFL or even big Power 5 programs because of the height. And the only guy I can think of that is a starting offensive tackle off the top of my head, just because I'm a fan of him, is Isaiah Wynn, and he's 6'3". Whether he's left or right, that's still up to debate. But most likely 6'3" is a great spot for an interior offensive lineman. Terrific power, ability to block at the second level, and just a great athlete. He attended the Champ U barbecue, and his expectations were surpassed, which obviously that seems to be a reoccurring takeaway that a lot of kids had. And, you know, sometimes you just don't know what to expect. And whenever you have 40 other recruits in town, Coach Beatenbaugh, he did well with them. Basically a straight shooter. That's what kind of Campbell said. And I think whenever you have a tradition of putting offensive linemen, we were just talking about the tradition of putting defensive linemen in the NFL draft. Well, Coach B has that great history of putting talent in the first, second, third, fourth rounds of the NFL draft. And I kind of think he's gotten to the point where his abilities sell themselves, which is nice. And so basically, Oklahoma is a championship culture. And I think that's what Campbell's looking for. I think he wants to be a winner, and it looks like he's going to make his decision in January. And he's a heavy Texas lean. I'm not saying that OU's changed his mind, but I think they gave him something to think about. And he's obviously the main programs, LSU, Alabama, USC, all the big dogs are coming after him. So what's your takeaway with him?
I would be super excited if this kid came over. I mean, I know we've never explained why we're called Two Plain Sports, but it's short. In summary, in college, us two and our other co-host Brandon, that isn't here today, he came up with a theory that to build a great program, you got to have big men in the trenches, both sides of the ball, and you need two planes to transport them because they have so much weight on them. And we loved it. Like, it makes sense. Why not dominate the trenches? If you can stop the defensive lineman, and if your defensive line can get past their offensive line, you're going to have a much easier game ahead of you. So this kid he's a big human being at 17 years old, and he's going to, wherever he goes, he'll have a great career. But if he comes to Oklahoma, like you said, like Coach B does put players in the NFL, no matter what draft. I mean, our highest drafted offensive lineman recently was Orlando Brown. And in his same class, we had Cody White, I believe, or Cody Ford. Sorry, Bobby Evans. Ben Powers, Drew Samia, Adrian Ely was in this last one. I don't believe he got drafted, but he got picked up as an undrafted free agent almost immediately. Like Coach B,
I think by the Ravens.
Yeah, and Coach B has that. He knows how to coach these guys up. One big thing I saw in his highlight tape was he uses his size to, obviously that's his biggest advantage right now in high school. And you're playing sophomores and seniors that probably are not as physically developed and gifted as him. So he just rams his head into whoever's on the other side of the ball. I think that his biggest, and it was just his highlight tape. Obviously, I don't watch every single snap of college or Texas high school football that he's in. But from his highlight tape, his biggest opportunity to develop is going to be his pass protection. I never really saw any pass sets. Like I said, he just puts his head down and he just doesn't let the other guy get past him because they just physically cannot move that big man. And he gets to the second level. The run game is going to be in great hands if he does wherever he goes. Obviously Texas probably really wants him right now because they have Bijan Robinson, but Oklahoma's got a great, other than having a great offensive line coach, we love running the ball. So we would love having him around. So hopefully he does get, like you said, we did give something for him to think about. So maybe he will consider being in Norman rather than Austin.
Yeah, and I think the key with him is getting him back on campus. Mm-hmm. And like the reoccurring or the theme we've been talking about is the product on the field. And there's a lot of hype with Sark, and not saying that he's going to fail. I think he's a better coach than Tom Herman ever was or ever will be. But I just think it seems like there's always a lot of hype comes with Texas. They land a few big recruits, and at least recent memory, since Mac Brown's left, they land a few big recruits with the hype, and then it's just a train wreck. And I'm not saying it's going to be a train wreck this time. And honestly, as much as it pains me to say this, I think it would be good for Oklahoma and the Big 12 conference if Texas is, dominant with Oklahoma. It just would be. And as much as it's the hardest thing to wrap your mind around, but I really think it's good for them. But if Oklahoma comes in, runs the table, wins the Big 12 title again, and then you've got Texas that goes 8-4. I mean, Ellender is gone. They go 8-4. It's like, oh, okay. Well, we're supposed to have Quinn Ewers come be our quarterback. Well, he's going to go be a Buckeye. Okay. And I just feel like if they're a disaster this year and they're not great, like they don't live up to the hype, a kid like this that might be not so much on the fence right now could become on the fence really quick.
Oh yeah.
If they lay a few eggs, it wouldn't take, at least for me, like I want to go to a program that has that championship culture, like he said, that Oklahoma has, and we all know we have. It's just, and then why would you want to go to a train wreck of a program when you're that good? When you have all the ability to make all the decisions, why would you go somewhere like that? I just, even if I'm not an Oklahoma fan, you put up Alabama, LSU, or Texas. Who are you going to go play for? Either Alabama or LSU. It's not even a question. I don't, unless you grew up a Longhorn fan, maybe, at least right now. I know the money's all the same. Texas has got great money. LSU does, Alabama does, but who wins and who's stable? Alabama and LSU. I guess LSU is a little 50-50, but they did win a national championship. Texas hasn't won forever, just like Oklahoma, but Oklahoma's won a lot of Big 12 titles and are on a great trajectory. I just think, definitely. I think if they're in hot water, this is a kid to watch, even if he commits before the season starts. I don't know when he's going to commit, but I actually think he would be, he's going to be, he could be 50-50 here pretty quick after definitely. a few rough games. But, I just think it speaks a lot to Oklahoma to get him on campus. So what else do you have to say about
it? For sure. I think going back to the point where you when you were talking about Texas, if they go 8-4, the only good excuse that Sark would have is if they start bad and finish off well. Like, whatever, one bad season, first year coach, first year quarterback, you're getting your system implemented. That is literally the only excuse that any coach should get. If you have one bad season, you better start off bad and get better. If he does what Herman did, which was start off hot almost every single season, play Oklahoma, suck, and then just suck for the rest of the way until they get to their bowl game and do okay in it. Like, that's why Herman is no longer in the Longhorns coach, because he, they were back and then they went they probably won like 5 games in a row one season and then just fucked everything, after that. Like it doesn't make any sense, right? Like they are supposed I agree with you too, with if Texas does become good and somewhat competitive in the Big 12, yes, it's going to suck for us because we can't win back to back to back to back to back to back to back. But now they're going to take the national media will take the Big 12 seriously. Like whoever wins the Big 12, it will be a much bigger deal than just Oklahoma runs the table like we always do. And I guess it is unfair because we are forgetting about Iowa State, and Matt Campbell's doing a great job up there, but they're not Texas, unfortunately for them.
No,
they will be one day, but Texas is another level just because of the media attention they get, even when they're bad, just like the Dallas Cowboys. Like Texas has a lot of media coverage, and we need them to be somewhat competitive so that when it comes to playoff selection, we get a slight bump because we beat a good Texas team rather than we keep running the Big 12, and that's what's kind of starting to hurt us. And we'll touch on the playoffs that could eventually change in another episode. But if Texas can start making, that expanded playoffs more regularly, then Oklahoma will regularly be a top 4, top 5 seed as long as we continue on the trajectory we're talking about, because Lincoln's not going away anytime soon, it seems like. And we keep Grinch, and there's no reason why we're not a dynasty in college football.
Yep. No, I agree. So I don't think I've got anything else to add. I think this was a very good, informative, touching on 4 great players. It's a lot of stuff to keep your eyes on. We're less than 70 days away from kickoff, which is exciting. But if you hadn't already, definitely like, comment, subscribe. We really appreciate all the input that we get from you guys. We'll definitely comment back. Any suggestions or anything like that, we definitely take those under consideration, and we really appreciate everything, and definitely stay up to date with the Hoodats. We did release earlier this week about Jordan Mukes. I know he isn't the biggest recruit, but we think he has a lot of potential, homegrown talent. Check that out and be watching for the Clayton Smith Hoodat for the following Monday, and which he's got a lot of potential talent. And then you've also got another episode coming out on Thursday covering playoff expansion, a few more recruiting notes, and a few other tidbits that we'll see over the next few days. So definitely keep in touch, keep liking, and we'll keep the content coming your way.
Definitely.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.